first ever Indian origin winner of the Shark Tank Showcase USA. He's also the senator of G20 Summit. Now, for the audience who've just joined in, I would like to take a minute and highlight some of his accomplishments. Chaitanya is a name to reckon with in the technologies and related trends globally. He's the first ever Indian origin entrepreneur to have won the Shark Tank USA. His company Scanta was chosen by Forbes 30 under 30 as the most disruptive startup of 2018. In 2019, he was selected as one of the top 25 people in technology by Entrepreneur magazine. He was also chosen as the youth icon for 2019 by Fame India. He was featured in Discovery Channel's Expedition Unknown series and represents startups of the United States in the global G20 summit as a senator. I'm tired, Chaitanya. I think that those are some of your accomplishments. We welcome you and we are eagerly waiting to hear from you. What are your thoughts?
Thank you so much for having me here, Shweta. Appreciate it. And I'm super excited to connect with you all and, share a little bit about our journey and answer a few questions and hopefully motivate a few of you guys to become entrepreneurs and get you on this side.
That's great. That's great. And I'm sure the students are going to go back with a lot of tips and interesting insights from you. So here we are for a brief Q&A, and there were so many questions that these students wanted to ask you at Amity University online. So we've just kind of rounded up a few questions, and we'll be quick, and we really want you to answer them and motivate these students.
Sure.
Now, we all know that you have had a very interesting journey so far. So to begin with, tell us about, from being an entrepreneur to reaching Shark Tank, how did the journey pan out?
Wow. So this takes me back. This will give you a little bit of a background, right? So I grew up in Delhi and went to Delhi University, sort of typical Delhiite. My parents had a family business. I didn't really want to get into that. I worked with them for some time, and then I decided, I want to do something different. I didn't really imagine at that time I'm gonna be an entrepreneur or do startups or anything like that. It was more about, trying something different. So I moved to the Czech Republic in Prague to do my master's, and with again no intention of startups at this time. So once I moved there, I saw a lot of opportunities in technology. It was a very exciting time. This was about a decade ago in 2012, 2013, and after I was there, I was studying, came across this opportunity in the virtual reality space. So at that time, it was very new, the whole VR headset. So like any fanboy, I got fascinated and I thought, this is a very exciting space. It's kind of simulation of an alternative universe through, what we call today as metaverse, but this was a decade ago. So I was fortunate enough to be exposed to that pretty early there, and I worked, got to know a lot of interesting people, including started working with Oculus, which is one of the leading VR devices out there. So one thing led to the other, and ended up in the US. That's where I am right now. I moved to San Francisco, and it's been about 5-6 years now. But if you asked me this question about a decade ago, I wouldn't really. I would have never imagined giving this answer in the wildest of my dreams. But here we are.
That's great. And it's very interesting to know how far you have come. Now, we want to know what, according to you, now we have spoken about entrepreneurship a lot, but what, according to you, is the most challenging part of becoming an entrepreneur, and that too at such a young age?
Right. I think there's just so much razzmatazz, if I may use that word, around being an entrepreneur. There's certain excitement, right, to being your own boss and all of those things. But again, some of you already would know this, right? It's a completely different ball game in the sense that 99% startups actually never really raise any money, or Raising money doesn't always sort of correlate to a startup being successful, but about 90% plus startups actually do fail. So according to me, and this is not to be a downer or anything, I just want to be realistic. I think the key piece really here is persistence for me, that I've learned over the years. I think it's less about, you have a fantastic idea. It doesn't really matter. According to me, it's 99% is execution. And I think what I've also learned in my journey is a lot of people actually, what they started doing and where they end up in 5 years, even if they started super successful, is actually pretty different from what they started with, right? So I think the key thing is, being persistent. And then
Mhm.
apart from that, there are, you want to obviously de-risk yourself. And this is a question I get a lot actually, which is, do I quit my job, or do I do a job, or I do a startup, and I think that's a very valid question that might resonate with a lot of people. And the way I look at it, again, it's my person sort of system is, I like to de-risk, and the way I like to de-risk is, while you're doing something, try to establish a product market fit to the best of your ability to what you're trying to build out, right? So some people come up and say, but that requires $1 million and then only I can do it. I don't think that's fair. I think there are other ways to establish that. You can do surveys. You can basically address the need and the need for the solution that you're pushing for. And once you're able to do something like that, I think then it makes sense for you to take a step towards that direction. But
Mhm.
the worst situation I find for people is when they have already jumped, right? So now you don't have any security, and that's again depends person to person, right? Some people don't really need it, but some people do, and you have to sustain yourself. And you imagine that within 6 months you'll get $1 million from a VC, and then you'll scale, and that 6 months becomes 8 months, and then 12 months, and then you get super stressed out, and then you're not able to focus on the product as much, right? So I think that's the risk I try to tell entrepreneurs. You want to probably avoid that, because you want to de-risk yourself in a sense that you can actually establish that with as less pressure as possible. And then once you have the product market fit, then you can possibly jump ship, right? But don't just jump into the sea just like that, if you have some obligations that would hamper sort of your thought process there. So that's kind of how I look at it, in terms of the challenging aspects in the startup journey.
Right. And I think you very rightly said that, once you have an idea, you have to actually chase that idea and prepare well. So it's always better to, kind of, get ready and prepare yourself well for the coming challenges. Very, very, very aptly put. So coming to that, now you have had, like, I think you've had an experience of more than, almost, I would say, 2 decades into this. And I'm sure there must be some low points in your life during this journey where you felt demotivated and you felt like giving up. So, what kept you up, and what was the secret portion?
A fantastic question. Just to correct you there, it's been a decade, not two. I'm not that old yet.
Oh.
Uh, but I think there have been so many low points. I think I don't know if I can point out a specific instance, but to the best of my ability, um, I'll sort of try to go back. I think I think till the time it's an idea, you don't have salaries to pay, and it's just you. That's a different kind of pressure. When you have salaries to pay and people depend on you for that, and that's why they work with you, their families, and all of that stuff, and that's where it really gets to you. So I think for me it was, I've sort of started maybe about 8 startups up till now. And um, I remember the first startup, like about a year later, we were already looking at, okay, after a year we're going to have X amount of money, and we're going to do this and that. And we were not able to do anything. We were not able to have any customers, so zero customers. We had no money. We were almost burnt out. We had cash flow for 2 months left. Were not able to pay salaries, and it was very stressful. And for anybody sort of going through that journey, I just want to advocate that's kind of the most normal thing that people go through, right? There are those down moments, and sometimes, and that sort of brings a lot of self doubt. Should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? I should have done this instead. It's just the most normal thing. I think it just depends if you're having a good day or a bad day, right? Irrespective if startup is $10 million or $1 billion or anywhere in between, you still have those days. You still have low days. And for me, that was one of the lowest days when I don't know what to do. But somehow, again, we survived, and thankfully, because of having an amazing team together, we were able to fight through. But those times are very challenging, and you never know if you're going to survive or not, and most people don't, and we might not have as well. But somehow, I think when you zoom out and look at the macro picture, and you're on course, it always kind of works out in the end.
Right. I agree on that. And that brings me to my next question. Now, I can gauge that you played it cool and you were calm about it. But, for all the budding entrepreneurs, what are the key skills or the elements or characteristics that you require to become an entrepreneur, and that to a successful one? What do you think?
So I think the key piece is having that persistence, right? You need to be in it for the long haul. You can't think about it like in 6 months I'll do this. If this doesn't work, it just doesn't really work that way. You need to be 100% committed. You need to be looking at this from a long term perspective. I think another key aspect that I try to emphasize on is time management. I think and the reason for that is I've seen myself grow. I can only talk about my personal experience. Um, I am very particular about how I manage my time now, because I like to really optimize, get the best out of it. Because there were times where and burnout is very real, and this whole philosophy of like hard work and stuff, I don't really advocate to. I do think that you should not work more than X number of hours a day. You should need to take time to sleep well. You need to take time for yourself. But then because if you have too much work, right, how do you manage it? And I think it's all about optimization of that time, right? And the way I like to look at it is like having that kind of focus. So if you're able to break down those particular tasks, right, I like to do it like a 15-minute chunk, 20-minute chunk, right? So I have, let's say, 50 things to do in a day. I try to divide them so that we can knock them off the list. Otherwise, again, this is all from my personal experience also. If I have 100 tasks to do, I get overwhelmed. I really don't know where to start. And then it gets procrastinated, and I'm working at night and all of that stuff. So I think time management, persistence, focus, those are the key areas where I look at.
And I think that's very relevant because nowadays we have so much to handle, so many challenges thrown at us. So time management is definitely the key, and that completely makes sense. So now looking at your life, we really want to know. Now you are an entrepreneur and you run 8 companies as of now. How important do you think is teamwork there? Since you have an idea, you're the boss, but you are also dealing with a lot of other minds. You have to bring everyone together and on the same page and think on the same line. So how do you do that? How important is teamwork, and how do you tackle that? How do you handle that?
So I think, see, I don't think that everybody is ever going to be on the same page. It's never really happened, at least to me. There's some more skilled entrepreneurs that probably can get that in place. What I mean by that is like, it's very healthy, I think, in a team to have, different points of view, right? But at a macro level, the mission should be aligned, right? So if we don't really believe in the mission, there's really no point, right? So I think for a team to work together, the macro sort of alignment on the vision needs to be there. And then there can, I think, healthy debates in terms of, is path A better, B better, C better, D better. It's a good way to approach it, right? So I do actually encourage constant feedback, or if you like to use the word criticism, within team members, to say, okay, let's debate, like, A versus B versus C versus D. But again, you have to balance that act, because if engineering gets into what kind of social media posts you want to do for marketing, then you're in a bit of a problem there, right? So I think for me, I think from a team perspective, just to share this, the most important thing that I look for fellow team members, and we're always expanding, is just kind of like having fun with the person I'm working with, because I think an alignment in terms of not particularly in terms of how we think or whatever, but more about like having that kind of energy between us, that it's a nice experience, because I don't think that working with someone needs to be taxing, right? I mean, you spend so much time together. I think both people deserve to have an atmosphere, a relationship that they actually enjoy. I spend so much time with my colleagues. I do actually, off work or on work, I do like to spend time with them. They're very dear to me. So that's actually, I think, a very important aspect that I look for in a team member.
And I still think that is very, very important to run a successful organization like you have. So now we hear that you actually retired at the age of 29, when people are just beginning to think or to uh, create a path of their own and choose their calling, but you retired at that age. So is there a second innings? We really want to know.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's been a fun experience. I think for me, it was all about, now is about making an impact. I do want to, sort of, based on whatever little I've learned over the last few years, I really want to make an impact. And I think one key space that I'm actively looking at, and something that we're trying to change here, is when we talk about fundamentally, what are the key aspects. And I think that those are the key fundamentals for human beings. It's not about entrepreneurship or not. And I think key aspect there is focus, right? And I think this day and age, right, where we have 10-minute 10-second TikTok, and I forgot, you don't have TikTok here, you probably have other apps, right, or Instagram stories or whatever, right? It's just our
Right.
attention span as human beings has depleted so much. And usually, and I like to ask everybody on this interview, a question, which is, how many times do you pick up your phone in the day that you don't have a particular objective picking it up? You're just picking it up, just like that, right? And for most people, that is arguably normal. And I think that
Right.
that's what I'm talking about in terms of addiction. You're picking up your phone, like, you want to check your email, you want to call a friend, but most of the people's answer would be, I don't know. I don't know why I'm picking up the phone. I just want to see what kind of notifications that I'm having, right? So in that case, the phone is using you. You're not really using the phone, right? So I think that's what we're trying to change a little bit, is how do we have, like, people's attention span go up, right? So trying to do that with Moment. That's an app that we'll be coming out with later this year. And anybody who wants to be a part of it, most welcome. And the goal really there is that we want to have a quantifiable measure of how to
Mhm.
increase your focus over a period of time, right? So we're sort of building that hypothesis out, and it's very exciting, because I think when we talk about burnout, or people are not getting too stressed about studies and all of that stuff, what we found out, and this is a research we did with Stanford University, in an 8-hour time span, people are typically productive for about 1 and a maximum 3 hours, right? So
Mhm.
you're not productive 70% of the time, right? Then you take that work home, or extra hours or whatever, and you kind of get into that cycle. So if we can actually increase focus, right, and if you're studying or you're doing whatever, right, if you can increase your focus by 20, 30, 40%, that reduces that time significantly. So you have time to, I don't know, whatever you like to do, exercise, hang out with your friends or whatever, because those things are important, right? So it's all
Mhm.
about, if you're sitting down for 8 hours to do something, you probably want to have at least 4 hours of productivity or 5 hours of productivity out of that, so that you don't have to go beyond it, right? And right now, that 8 hours and being stretched to 12 hours and still not achieving the objective. So I think that's kind of the area that at least we're trying to change, because I think that will solve a lot of problems for professionals, for students. So So we'll see how that goes. So, but the app is called Moment, so we'll be coming out with it very soon.
Really excited, and I think that's a brilliant idea. So we're waiting for that.
Awesome.
So yeah. So Chaitanya, as you know, that at Amity University Online, we nurture leaders of tomorrow, and we focus on the skills, the entrepreneurial skills, and leadership skills and management skills. So if I were to ask you that if you had to choose or recommend a course from Amity University Online to the students, which one would that be and why?
That's a that's a tough one. I don't want to offend anybody on this call, but I did actually go through a few courses just before this call, and I think the course that really, and by the way, if I knew that you can do an MBA online 10 years ago, I would not have chosen anything else. But I think looking at all the courses out there, I think the one that I found interesting was the digital entrepreneurship MBA. And I know that
Mhm.
you have AR, VR, and all that also. And I'll tell you the reason behind it. I think it's all about, for me, the fundamentals, right? Unless you've
Mhm.
established yourself in a particular niche and you want to focus on that, great. Then it makes sense. But you want a broad sort of overview. I think this resonates the best with me because product management and all of those different aspects, right, are relevant irrespective. You do a startup, you join a services company, you join a product company, whatever you do, or you build your own thing. It's relevant for in all across these cases, right? So I would pick that one because I think it
Mhm.
lays a good foundation to whatever you want to build further.
Yes, yes, and that is what we want, what we aim to achieve here at Amity Online. So, Chaitanya, I think we got some wonderful insights from you. Thank you so much for this. And I think we have some questions from the audience. I can see some people writing questions for you. So, we would just like to take a few questions from the audience. Now, the first question I have is from Rahul, and he's asking me that if what role does education play in your success or in anybody's success? So how important is the right education in a successful career?
Rahul, that's an amazing question. And I would not hold this true for everyone. I'll just share my personal experience. I was a horrible student. I don't want to mix my words with that. I was a really bad student. And I think different people are different, right? So I was not able to work or sort of learn in a structural kind of environment, right? But at the same time, there are a lot of my friends that have been successful entrepreneurs that were very successful in that structure, right? So I think nowadays, just because of everything being online and I know so many engineers at Tesla and Google in the Bay Area that have absolutely no education also, right? And they're just like hardcore coders, right? So it really depends on where you're going, right? So if you're an engineer and you can sort of self-learn, that's one path, right? If you want to be a product manager or sort of getting into that sort of management role in an enterprise, and still it requires, people do prefer MBA degrees, because we don't have that kind of entry, filtration that pure
Mhm.
tech has. So I think it depends on the career that you're looking at. But I think for in the technical space, there's a lot of self-learning that's relevant. In the product management space, it's still a certain barrier that you have to value, a master's degree much more.
Fair enough. Now we have a question from Jyotika Gupta. She's asking that can you tell us about your belief system basis which the culture and values of your organization are designed for? We have a question from Jyotika.
It's a great, fantastic question. Thanks, Jyotika. I think the key differentiator for me has always been people. I've been very blessed to have people that I like to hang out with and discuss ideas. And actually, for me, it's important that, when you wake up in the morning, and kind of have to be a little excited, right? If you're in the startup space, right? You want to be excited to work with the people that you work and sort of go to office. And again, I don't want to sugarcoat anything because a lot of days I don't want to get out of bed. But I think for me, culture, team, is the most important aspect, right, in the organization.
Right. And we have another question from Madhushri Das. She's asking, in your journey, what was the lowest or the highest point that defined your success? We have a question from Madhushri.
Wow. So I think I did get into this a little bit, which was, as I mentioned, like 1 year after we started, in my first startup, we did not have money to pay salaries. It was just very stressful. And I think one way for me to get out of it, right? I just I got into a little bit of meditation. So I do meditate. I have my time for myself. I realized that getting enough sleep really helps me. Not get stressed out. So all of the classic symptoms of burnout need to be sidelined, because I think it gets really overwhelming, right? If you're constantly sort of in that state. So for me, when we were really low without any customers revenue, a lot of investor pressure also jumps in, and all of these things helped, sleeping and meditating, and just taking some time for myself. Or also, I think whenever you're in that state, right, and this is true for, I think, most people I know, when you're feeling super stressed out, if you can just zoom out, I know it's difficult to do, but if you can zoom out, look at the whole picture from a macro perspective, um, you know and you can do this experiment, right? You can look at any particular moment that you were really really stressed out, between the ages of 10 to 15, that you can recall, and how do you view that moment today, right? It might be your board examinations or whatever, right? At that time it was like the end of the world, and now it's just like, okay, not such a big deal as it was earlier. So I try to sort of zoom out and get some perspective.
Right. And I really think that is very important to you to take a step back and, and to introspect and see where you are in life. And that's one thing that I'm going to take back today and practice that too. Just one last question, Chaitanya. We have a question from, okay, so we have a question. What's non-negotiable when you decide to embark upon a challenging journey? So I don't have the name here, but I think that's a interesting question. Would you
Yeah,
like to?
that is a great question. I think, coming back to this, I think it's all for me about persistence. So if you're whatever you're doing, right, you need to, we have this thing right now, and I think this specifically, not only for millennials or Gen Zers, is, just the culture that we're in. We quit, and we expect results too fast. It just takes
Mm-hmm.
time. You need to sort of build a solid foundation. You need to have persistence, and if you have
Right.
persistence, you marry that with focus. You
Mm-hmm.
break those tasks down and optimize your performance. I think those are the two important things, according to me, is it's persistence in a human being, as well as their ability to focus on the tasks at hand.
All right, 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 right. Now we have a classic question here, which I think you have already answered, but still would like to know how to become an entrepreneur. So this is Swati. If in one line you had to tell her how to become an entrepreneur.
I would say try to just look at a problem that needs solving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take much to do that. Can be within your internal network, friends, family, or whomsoever you think you want to. It's on entrepreneur is just sort of a word we use. It's all about, you're solving a problem, or you're bringing a product into this world that's needed. So what is the problem that you're solving, Swati? I think that's the key piece there, and you can validate that, within your circle. And if you have a solution for it, well, by default, you're an entrepreneur.
Right, very well said, Chaitanya. Now we have the most important question, and that is directly asked by our very own chairman, Mr. Ajit Chauhan, and he wants to ask you that what advice do you have for entrepreneurs in Indian edtech, and which direction should they be heading? And would you ever enter into Indian edtech?
Wow, that's a pretty intense question. I don't know if particularly I'm qualified to give guidance to all the awesome edtech entrepreneurs out there in India right now, but I think for me, to sort of share my personal take on it, I think for me, I think there's a lot going on in this space right now. I've just been here in India for, I think, the last 6, 7 weeks now, and I see this everywhere. And in the US, we don't have it as prominently, right? And I think it's exciting, but at the same time, I think we need to be very cautious, right? That it doesn't. For me, education is a very sacred thing, and it really disappoints me that sometimes when it's commercialized to the extent that I'm seeing in the Indian space right now. So I think for me, it's all about actually adding value, right, to
Right.
students' life and everything else. But I think that it's a very exciting space. There's a lot of competition. I don't know enough to understand what's the differentiator between the multiple platforms out there. But I think that all of the Indian ecosystem is way ahead of what I'm seeing in the US. Like the leading edtech platforms here are like valued 10x of what a US equivalent would be valued. So that tells us a lot.
Right. That tells us a lot. Truly, that's really true. So I think we've no, wow, this was a very, very insightful conversation, Chaitanya. I think we have a lot to take away from this conversation. And yes, I know that you have to go back to the US now. You'll be traveling soon, and we really, really wish you all the best for your all your future endeavors. And we are actually looking forward. I think we are really short of time. I would like to extend this maybe later, but yes, we would like to have many more such interactions with you in the future. But for now, we wish you all the best from the Amity online family, and wish a lot of success for you. So thank you so much for taking our time today.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you, everyone, for logging in, and thanks, Amity Online, for setting this up. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Bye bye.
All right, thank you everyone for joining in.